Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our new Insight60 webinar summer series. This is the second in this, and we're delighted that you've taken the time to join us this morning. My name is Stephen Shield, and I'm the External Relationships Director here at the OGTC, and I'll be your host and facilitator for this session. Roughly, we're going to have about 100 or so people on the webinar today, so really delighted with the numbers and looking forward to hearing your questions and commentary once we've done the presentation. So what's all this about? What's Insight60 all about? Well, Insight60 is 60 minutes of insightful and interactive web discussion focusing on the whole issue of energy transition. We're going to really deep dive into that subject throughout this series this summer. We've invited top leaders and industry experts to the series to outline their challenges and the many technology solutions that are emerging to help guide us through this energy transition period that we're going through. So in terms of format, there'll be 30 minutes of insights from our keynote speaker. You'll then hear from the OGTC leadership team. I'm going to call them in as part of a panel. There's only going to be about two or three of them. They'll comment on the presentation, start the question set rolling, and then the forum is yours for 20 minutes to steer the conversation. I'll probably give a shout out to a few people if I ask you to participate. I'll let you know through the chat first, and if you're happy to actually ask your question directly to the speaker, then that's fantastic. We'll do that. So remember, this session is designed to be interactive, so this is an opportunity to come forward with your questions for our speaker this morning, who is Nico Van Dooren. So Nico Van Dooren is from the Port of Rotterdam. He's the Director of New Business Development with the port. He's intimately involved in their energy transition efforts, and we're really looking forward to hearing what he has to tell us this morning. Before we move on to Nico, there's a couple of things that I'd just like to do. First of all, I'll direct you to our housekeeping slide. I think that's on now. So I'm not going to read out the housekeeping slide because you can read that for yourself. The other thing I'd like to do is do a little poll. So if we can get the poll up, team, that would be useful. Super. This little poll, before we hand over to Nico, I'd quite like us to see how we can interact on the poll. So I'm confident that we can decarbonise our industrial activities in Scotland and that we have the technologies to achieve net zero. So fire away, take part in that. We'll see how we go. Okay. If we can see the results, there we are. 62% of us agree that we're confident we can achieve that. Okay, I'm now going to hand over to our guest speaker for this morning, Nico Van Dooren. Nico, hopefully you're there and you can see us and hear us and you can share your slides.
Yes, Stephen, I'm going to try to share the slides. Yeah, okay.
Over to you, Nico.
I think we're in. Do we have connection now?
Yeah, I think we're in, Nico. We can see the first slide.
You can see the first slide. Well, thank you all for your patience. We had some troubles with the technical things of the presentation. So I think I can start straight away.
Yes, please.
Okay, then we'll start. Let's see if it all works. I think you all went through the housekeeping rules, so I can start with my presentation about the case in Rotterdam.
Absolutely. Thanks, Nico.
Well, what a way to start. I would have liked to start in person, but it's an online webinar, so we'll do it like this. What I will get you through is a presentation on energy and transition, pathways to sustainable industry for the Port of Rotterdam. And this first slide shows you a picture of, and I use this picture to illustrate that future industry might just look the same as industry today, because what you see here is a picture of a bio-based industry which already is in place today in Rotterdam, but it still looks the same as industry as we know it. So a lot will change, but what we see might not change. In this presentation, I will take you through a case which I'm working on in the Port of Rotterdam. My name is Nico Van Dooren. I'm Director of New Business Development at the Port of Rotterdam Authority. And in the top right of this slide, you can see our mission. It's aiming on sustainable growth and focusing both on economic and social value. On the left bottom, you see some numbers indicating what we're working with for and what we're doing in the Port of Rotterdam. And the numbers are big, but it gives you a lot of responsibility to work towards a good future. Because if you look at employment, 85,000 people working direct and indirect in and around the port. Well, we want to keep it that way also for the future, and that's why we try to develop the port in a sustainable way. But if you take a closer look at where we are today, in this graph, the cargo ratios in 2019 are shown, and if you look at it, then liquid bulk consisting of crude oil, gas, LNG, all kinds of mineral oil products. It's fossil. If you look at the dry bulk part, it's coal for steel industry, and coal for energy. That's also fossil. And if you look at the container part, a lot of the cargo in the containers is fossil based. So we are a port which is dominated by fossil fuels, and to the bone, you could say we are fossil. And it's not just the Port of Rotterdam. The Port of Rotterdam is very well connected through a comprehensive pipeline system for hydrogen, ethylene, propylene. It's connected to the large industrial areas in Antwerp, in Belgium, but also in Germany. So it's not just the Port of Rotterdam. We're dealing with the whole cluster of industry in the northwestern part of Europe. And if you then think of what was agreed in Paris a couple of years ago, and you let it work in your mind, in your brain, and you get to notice what is written there, what is agreed, and you think of the Port of Rotterdam and its all cluster with which it's connected, then you need to think of what are we today and how can we follow what is agreed in Paris. So I'll now go to what is working on today in the Port of Rotterdam. And in the core of the port, there are over 30 refinery processes, over 40 petrochemical processes, and over 70 electricity generation units, small and really big ones. We use as feedstock in the port all these feedstocks. There's a lot of conversion taking place in the port. And then we make a lot of products like fuel and feedstock, and we also export natural gas and electricity. And in this conversion, roughly 1/5 of all the Netherlands' carbon dioxide emissions occur. So this is where we are today. And then you think of what has been agreed in Paris, and then you need to make up your mind on how are we going to deal with this situation? How do we change the port industry into a sustainable industry? How do we meet the goals that are set in Paris? So what we did is we performed two really large, extensive studies. The first one is focusing on what kind of pathways could you find to to make the port sustainable. And what we did was have a look at Europe in 2050 and then think of what kind of products Europe would need in a clean Europe. So what products do you need? What fuels, what chemical products, what are needed in a sustainable future? So that was the first step. And then the second step was, how can you produce, how can you make these products in a sustainable way? We defined 4 pathways. The numbers are indicated in the screen. And as you can see, there are different pathways meeting more or less the agreements that have been made in Paris. 30% reduction is obviously not enough. 75 is getting more in the way. And 98, we find 2 pathways that can lead us to almost net zero. So this is for port industry in the port. I'll get to that later on in my presentation in more detail. But we also do have a lot of supply chains running through the port. So we performed another study in 2018 to investigate the possibilities to decarbonize the supply chains. So not the cargo in the supply chain, but how do you transport in a decarbonized way. Both studies we did together with the Wuppertal Institute from Germany. So we used really deep inside knowledge of industrial processes. Then when we had these studies, we set up a business development program. And if you take a bit of a helicopter view on this program, you can divide it into 3 steps. So the first step, what we're working on, is the development of infrastructure. Infrastructure for residual heat, for carbon dioxide, for hydrogen, for steam, for electricity. So what we are doing today is developing the energy infrastructure for the future. It'll work today to raise efficiency, and it'll work in the future for new cargoes and new energy feedstocks. That's step 1. Step 2 is focusing on the energy system. And what we obviously need is a lot of renewable energy to drive all the processes in the port. So we are developing renewable energy in the port with solar and wind, onshore wind. But we are also connected to large offshore renewable energy developments in the North Sea area, and trying to connect these renewable energy systems to the port, either by electricity or by hydrogen. We're also working on the development of import of renewable energy through different energy carriers, like, once again, hydrogen. So that's the second step. And then the third step is the change of the whole feedstock system. And there we can make a distinction between 3 different elements, focusing on either renewable fuels and chemicals, circular economy, and the use of alternative fuels. And then the last one is about sustainable supply chain. That is one business development program which comes from the second study. I indicated 2 studies, one about industry, one about supply chains. Industry is divided into the 3 steps: infrastructure, energy system, and feedstock system. And the second study is about sustainable supply chains. Now I do have 3 short animations of the 3 steps, so I'll try to put them on. This is the first step, is about the development of infrastructure. And what you will see is a rough sketch of the infrastructure existing today and what we are developing. There's a large focus on raising efficiency in industry. We have different programs together with industry to raise efficiency. One of the ways in which we can raise efficiency is by using residual heat in the surrounding areas where there are a lot of greenhouses and residential areas. We're working on carbon capture and storage to develop the infrastructure for that. There is a large steam network in the Botlek area, and we are in the middle of development of a hydrogen network. So this is a rough visual of what we are working on in the first step. Now it might seem that these are following steps, so you do the first, then the second, and the third. But that's not how we do it. We do all three steps at the same time. So a visual of the second step I will share with you now. This is the one about the energy system, where it's about going from today, where we have an energy system based on coal and natural gas and crude oil. Here we develop the different colors of hydrogen, so to say. Currently, there's a lot of gray hydrogen production in the port of Rotterdam. We are working on carbon capture and storage to make this gray blue. And meanwhile, we're also developing green hydrogen. Later on in the presentation, I'll get to more detail about the hydrogen developments. And then we'll move on to the third step, the one about the change of the feedstock system, the raw materials system. So this is about circular economy and renewable fuels and chemicals. What we do see is a change in used feedstocks from crude oil to more power, biomass, and hydrogen. The products made come from the analysis that we made of Europe in 2050, what is needed in Europe. These are all beautiful visuals, but we didn't wait and just make visuals. We already started. So we have a lot of projects which we already developed in the port of Rotterdam, which have been realized to date. So if I go from right to left, at the right-hand side of this this overview, you see the old ports in the city center, and in this ports we developed mobile shore power, so shore power for ships that are at quay, and we use clean power to fuel the ships, so to say. There's also a cruise terminal in that area, and the cruise ships are powered when they are at shore by LNG. You can see water taxi on hydrogen. As of next year, the water taxis in Rotterdam will, a few of them to start with, will sail on hydrogen. In an older area, we have rooftops of distribution estates with solar. And then you see, I think for English people, a bit difficult, but it's vondelingen warmte. And that's a residual heat system connecting the refinery of Shell with the surrounding residential areas. You can also see expansion Reco, and that's an installation where they recycle asphalt and they make new building materials. Smart Energy Nourion in the Botlek area. That's a large facility of Nourion for former AXO, and it's connected to a wind farm, which is about 50 kilometers away, and they use the curtailment also of wind in their facility. Pilot LOHC is LOHC stands for Liquid Organic Hydrogen Carrier, and there we are trying to develop different ways into transport hydrogen. In the blue area, that's the Europort area. There we are working on some new sites. Recycle is a site where we can recycle and reuse batteries from cars. Black Bear is about car tire recycling, where you can use the carbon black coming from tires. I'll not go through all of them, but if you then go to the area on the left, you see circular steam Lyondell. That's 150 million investment being made to optimize the steam system within the Lyondell site, realizing 140 tons of carbon dioxide emission reduction. So you see there are a lot of projects already today in place. If you look at the final one, Haliade X, that's a test site for a large wind turbine of 12 megawatts by GE, and they're testing it onshore for use offshore later on. So there's a lot going on today. And I have some few examples of what we're working on for tomorrow, so to say. So one of this is in the first stage, so this is about infrastructure. It's a development we're working on together with GasUnie and EBN. It's a development of an infrastructure for carbon capture, usage and storage. And what we are developing now is a pipeline consisting of an onshore and an offshore part. An onshore pipeline connecting all the large emitters in the port and connecting them through a compressor station to depleted oil and gas fields offshore. And we're in the middle of the finalizing the contracts now, so it's a really exciting period for this project, but it's going well. It's going really well, so we expect this project to really get into to realization. You also see a green line, and that's the connection from the port area to the greenhouse area. So already today, there is between 0.5 megaton and 1 million ton of carbon dioxide delivered from the port area to the greenhouse area to make the growth of tomatoes and cucumbers and so on better by the use of extra carbon dioxide. So this one is really going well, and it's also from the philosophy that if you develop infrastructure, it'll work today, so you will get immediate carbon dioxide emission reductions, but it also will be there for tomorrow, because we need to go to carbon capture and usage. And you can use the same infrastructure today to get to storage and tomorrow to get to usage. I told you that I would get back to elaborate a bit more on hydrogen. We are working on the development of a hydrogen backbone, and that is the white pipeline that you see in this area. And this backbone will connect all existing industry, but also will be connected to import terminals for hydrogen, and it will be connected to conversion parks where electrolysis will take place. And now we thought of this as being, well, maybe it should have been ready by 2030, but there are some projects which are getting faster than we thought. So what we're working on today is that we see that this backbone should be in operation by 2023. Because in 2023, maybe early 24, one of the large electrolysis plants will get into production. It will be operated by Shell. It will be a 150 and well, maybe 200, 250 megawatt electrolyzer. It's a connection of an offshore wind farm directly to an electrolyzer, making hydrogen, which would then be used either in the refinery of Shell in Pernis or as a fuel for different markets. And then you see just after that, you see H250. That's a project we're developing together with Nourion and BP. And we hope to see an investment decision of that project in 2023. It also will be connected to this backbone. And then you see later on, you see different projects for the development of trucks fueled with hydrogen. And you see H-Vision. H-Vision is a project with BP, Exxon, Shell, Air Liquide, Vopak, Gasunie, and we are involved for the development of blue hydrogen. So you see a lot of projects in the pipeline, so to say, but developments that will take place. We are starting with the backbone this year. Will take place within the next 5 to 10 years. And now this one is important, not just for Rotterdam, but I think for also for the UK and for Germany. What we see is that development of offshore wind is of great importance. We should really get into the development of large-scale offshore wind. But we also should realize that it's not enough. If you look at the energy and feedstock consumption in Europe, and you look at the future, then you will see that import from other areas is needed. There's simply not enough offshore wind to meet the demand of energy. So that's why we really focused on the development of supply chains for hydrogen coming from either the Middle East, North Africa, or other areas. And not just for Rotterdam, but remember the first slide I showed you about the connection of the industrial cluster with Antwerp and Germany. We think that also in the future, these supply chains for hydrogen will be the same as the ones for crude oil today. Now in stage 3, remember the first stage was infrastructure, the second stage was the renewable energy system, and the third is the feedstock system. There we have some projects in development for well, so to say, waste to chemicals. And these are projects, one of them is with Enerchem, Nourion, Air Liquide, and Shell, in the development of a facility that turns waste into methanol. Difficult developments, but also going in the right direction. So we hope to see an FID for this project end of this year, maybe start of next year. What you've seen so far is that all these projects that I indicated are cooperation projects. There is not a single project that we as Port of Rotterdam do on our own. It's all in alliances with different companies, be it really big ones like Shell or BP or Exxon, or be it small one or even startups. So it's all about cooperating in development of new value chains. And this is also an example of a new value chain that we developed together. This is inland barges that we will be driven by green power. So what we do is we make containers with batteries, and you can swap these containers to an inland barge. And this is a cooperation between ING, the bank, Angie from France, Wärtsilä, the builder of ship engines, and we as Port of Rotterdam. And then we have a large customer, Heineken, who wants to transport its beer in a carbon neutral way. And once again, a cooperation, really difficult because they're all companies from different areas. The energy really goes in how do you get all these companies to work together towards a goal of clean transport. By the end of the year, the first ship will sail with these batteries. And then we're looking in how to develop this more from inland barges, maybe also to short ship. This one is a bit strange one, but I think it's really interesting also for for you from the OGTC. We developed a field lab in Rotterdam for 3D printing in metal. And 2 years ago, it's not the one shown in the picture, but 2 years ago we printed the first propeller for a large ship. And now, why is this in a presentation about energy and feedstock transition? What we think and believe is that if you can get the digital developments and the energy and feedstock transition together, then we'll get to our goal earlier. So what we want with this is that you get to on-demand printing of spare parts for the petrochemical industry or process industry. So we're trying to develop an industry where with sensors you can see when certain parts are getting to their end and start on-demand printing just before that. And so you can change your spare parts at the right time with the right part. So that's where we're working on. And once again, with a large group of companies, big ones, small ones, but in a really good atmosphere, this is working really well. Now we do this for economic development, but it's also mainly focused on carbon dioxide emission reduction. So what I've shown you, the 3 steps: infrastructure, energy system, and feedstock system, the development of sustainable supply chains. Where does this lead us when you look at carbon dioxide emissions? In the first step, we will see that some of the old coal-fired power plants already were shut down. There were also 2 new-built coal-fired power plants that were opened just in 2013, 2015. They will be shut down by 2030. Then we see the energy efficiency and carbon capture, usage, and storage come into play. We will see renewable energy, renewable feedstocks, bio and waste as feedstock, and we see the development of geothermal energy. So with all this, we can get to the 49% reduction compared to 1990. This is the goal that has been set in the Netherlands. And you can see that by 2050, we will get to roughly a net zero industrial area. And there will also be effects outside the port area to add to that, but that's a different scope emission. Well, with that, I am reaching the end of my presentation with I think, beautiful picture of one of the big vessels of Heerema. And it's not just that it's a beautiful picture, but what we are doing here is together with Eneco, a Dutch energy company, we are connecting the wind turbines that you see in the back straight to the crane vessel of Heerema, so that while it's being docked, it doesn't have to use their diesel engines to work with it. So this is a 20 megawatt shore power installation that's being developed as we speak. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Nico. Wow. First of all, what a great recovery at the beginning, and that must have been stressful for you coming in like that. But you made it seamless. So appreciate that. Fantastic presentation. Lots to unpack from that. Really huge, complex projects, all working together. So at this stage, what I'd like to do is ask some of our panelists to join us just for commentary and a comment question, and then we'll open the discussion wider. So I'm going to come to Myrtle first. Myrtle, if you're with us, because big hub projects are close to your heart at the moment. So is there anything that you want to comment or ask Nico? You're on mute still.
Sorry, schoolgirl error. Yeah, so this is really fantastic and definitely in action, which is amazing. So my question was around the various hubs being created. There are 5 industrial clusters in the UK planning to do something similar. Is there collaboration going on between them, or are they being competitors?
Okay, Myrtle, your mic, it wasn't that clear, but I will ask the question again, just in case anyone didn't hear it. There are 5 industrial cluster projects, or 5 or 6, I think, happening in the UK right now. In terms of collaboration with some of these projects, does the Port of Rotterdam, have you reached out to them? Are you aware of some of the work that's going on in the UK? Are you building partnerships?
Yeah, we are aware of some of the projects that are going on in the UK. We do have contact once in a while, not enough, I think, with some of the companies in the UK that are working on this. So in the field of energy, for instance, and the development of carbon capture and storage, we do have contact. But I think we can share more and develop more together. For instance, we have been working on a project called the North Sea Wind Power Hub. There was a cooperation with Dutch, German, and Danish companies, and we've been trying to get the British energy industry involved. But you know, Brexit was really getting in the way of all this developments. But I think we should continue and share our knowledge from both sides.
Okay, thank you, Myrtle, for your question. Luca, do you have a comment to put to Nico, or a question?
I have many questions, but I'll just pick one, because I know there are some fantastic questions in the chat as well from our attendees. About government intervention or government support, Nico, how critical has government support been so far, and how critical it is now, and to make it happen? And which form did it take? It was direct funding, much funding, market creation for CO2 or hydrogen, other forms?
Good question, and a difficult question.
Sorry.
It's a combination of starting as industry with the development of projects, and then presenting them as a project which might help the government to solve their issues. So that is what we tried. We try to develop our own projects and develop them as solutions for the issues for government and for society. And meanwhile, asking for support from the government. Because if you look at, for instance, the development of this carbon capture infrastructure, we develop it in a bigger way. We engineer it bigger than is needed today. So somebody should take the cost of this future capacity, so to say. And that's where we have discussions with the government. If you look at schemes, for instance, for carbon dioxide pricing or taxation, things like that, we think that taxation is needed, but then please do it together as Europe, or a number of countries in Europe, because what we see now is that we have a taxation on carbon dioxide emissions in the Netherlands coming into play maybe next year. It has been postponed by Corona. But if that happens, then we see that there will be competition between the different states in Europe, and I think that's not the way to go forward. We really should work together on this. So in short, to your question, it's a combination of all these measures and schemes that is needed. But I think starting as an industry by developing your own projects and then going to government is the way forward.
Thanks for that question. Look, at David, I'll come to you. Obviously, innovation's at the heart of everything that you do, so I'm keen to hear what you have to ask Nico.
Yeah, thanks, Nico. Great presentation. Really exciting to see to what's going on in Rotterdam. My question actually is more around people and skill pools. So there's a lot of new technology, a lot of new frontiers being driven forward here. So did you find you had the skills available locally, or are we having to do some retraining, reskilling? Were you having to bring talent in to help support the project?
Also both. What we've seen in the Netherlands, and I don't know how it's in the UK, but in the last maybe 10-20 years, people didn't go to technical, they didn't do technical studies. What we've seen in the last 5 years, that it's changing again. People are turning away from law and economics and going more into technical studies. So yeah, we see that we now miss some of the competencies that are needed for this transition, but we also see that in schools it's already changed. I had the example of Wrapup in it, the Rotterdam additive manufacturing, the 3D printing in metal, and that's a real combination of industry and university, academia to co-develop these new technologies. And we have it placed in an area where there are schools for all levels, so people can do traineeships on this 3D printing. So we try to really incorporate all new developments in industry and in academia and training. But it's a difficult task to get the right competencies for it.
Okay, thank you, Nico. Just given time, we've got 15 minutes left, so I'm keen to open up the discussion to the audience. And to kick things off, I'm going to ask if we can go to Neil Wilkinson first, David Wilson, and then Kees de Recht. So Neil, are you there? And would you like to pose your question to the panel? And it is a panel question, so if anyone on the panel wants to respond, please feel free to do that. But Nico, you're the guest speaker, so we're really keen to hear your views more than anyone else.
Thanks, Stephen, and thanks, Nico. That was a great presentation. Yeah, my question was around the hydrogen network. Of course, we've seen initial reviews of an existing pipeline suggest that issues like corrosion and embrittlement of materials make it difficult to reuse existing pipelines. So we're just wondering, is the hydrogen system based on a completely new concept, or are you using existing pipelines, reusing different structures there?
Well, I think all my answers start with the combination, so also this one. There are some developments in the Netherlands where they're trying to reuse existing methane pipelines for hydrogen. So in the south of the Netherlands, existing pipeline has been refit, so to say. But the development of the backbone we're working on will be a new pipeline system for hydrogen.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Neil. David Wilson from Opportunity Northeast, are you still with us? And if so, anything to comment on, or would you like to ask a question?
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. Thanks, Nico. That's a great presentation. And I think what you're doing in Rotterdam, it really demonstrates, the strength of partnerships, as you mentioned. It just really demonstrates ambition. And I think it demonstrates a reminder that a lot of these technologies exist right now, so we should get after it. And I think clearly in the future, a room for technology to help improve and optimize how we do these things. So no, great presentation. Thanks. I work for a private sector catalyst. We're privately funded. I'm Director of Energy at Opportunity Northeast, and we're privately funded to work in partnership with others to make transformational difference here in Northeast Scotland, or in my case around the energy transition. And we do work with partners. One of the things we did working with Blue Dot, with Scottish Enterprise, with others, was to help create Nexus, which is the CCUS cluster for Scotland. And Mike Smith's on the call, I hope he is. But I think through creating Nexus, it demonstrates that we're bringing together companies and individuals to focus on this challenge about creating a cluster, producing CO2 and then ultimately storing it via the ACOM project. I was wondering, for Rotterdam, do you have, I guess you have many bilateral conversations with individual companies to create these plans that you have, but do you have a similar steering group or a cluster group where where there are many members and you act in a coordinated way to plan this for the future ambition? Thank you.
Yeah, there is. What I've shown you that we did 2 studies in 2017 and 2018. And we use this study as a starting material to develop together with all companies in the port an approach, and that is the 3-step approach. So the 3-step approach was made together with developed together with all industry in the port and around the port. And that really helps to have this support for the developments that we need to do together.
Thanks, David. Thanks, Nico, for the answer. I'd like to go now to Kees de Recht. I hope I pronounced your name right, Kees.
Yeah, it's Kees. It's
Kees, there you go.
Dutch name, actually. So yeah, I actually had two questions. I'm being a little bit cheeky here, but the first question is kind of, I think, quite straightforward. So I had a lot of questions about hydrogen and the use of hydrogen as a vector or as a carrier and also as a fuel. But I think Nico sort of answers those questions. The one remaining for me is when you look at sort of green and blue hydrogen. For me, blue hydrogen is a little bit, I wouldn't say a cheat, but it's kind of, for me, not really a long-term sustainable solution. I mean, green obviously is better than blue. Of course, blue is still better than gray or brown. But I mean, how do you see that, Nico? In the long term, will there always be blue? A need for blue hydrogen, or do you actually see that there's a transition towards a sort of more green?
I think the short answer is that I see it as a transition, and I think why we need blue hydrogen is a matter of time. I didn't have it in the presentation, but if you look at carbon dioxide emissions and temperature rise, we simply do not have the time to redevelop all industry. We need to cut emissions today, and there I think blue comes into play.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. And then my second question is, of course, I know that sort of a key driver has been the regulator in the Netherlands pushing this, and I think the port of Rotterdam has taken this as a challenge, and it's really great to see what's happening. But I'm just wondering, sort of, do you see this as on the long term? Do you think there's an advantage for the port of Rotterdam as compared to other ports like Antwerp or just mentioning Antwerp is the obvious one, but is it because you could say, well, we're doing a lot of investment here, but if others are not doing the same thing, then we may actually be harming ourselves and harming our sort of competitiveness. Do you see that, or how do you see that?
Competition is in this approach, definitely, but cooperation, I think, even more. If you look at the relation between Antwerp and Rotterdam, then you can say that if you look at container traffic, they are competitors. But if you look at industry, it's one cluster. So I think we need to develop this together with Antwerp, and then for sure you want maybe a bit more than they, but the main overarching theme is to develop this together. That's why also in my first answer I said that cooperation and sharing with what's happening in the UK is really important for us.
Great answer, Nico. Something that we have to really work on to make happen. So I'd like to move on to a few other participants in the audience. Antonius, are you free to ask your question?
Thank you, Stephen. I'll make the question very quick because I had some issues with my internet, so it might crash at any point. So Luke asked quite a bit of what I had in mind anyways, but I can understand that it's important to get like policy support in this kind of large scale projects. My question is, what did you find that it was the main selling point for the government or the local policy community to support you? So was it a case of focusing more on the economic benefits? Was it a case of focusing more on the sustaining or creating new jobs? How did you find that you manage to gain traction with the policy community for this kind of project?
I think we focused for each stakeholder group on different parts. But one element that was really important is to really show that this is what industry also wants, and what they are trying and willing to develop. So earlier I explained that the two studies were the basis of a three-step approach, and that three-step approach has full support of all industry. And that is one of the main reasons why regulator and government wants to support. So that really helps. But then obviously in one area you need to focus more on jobs, and the other one more on economic value. But it's all in the approach.
Thanks, Nico. Moving along, Liz Hoskin, are you free to ask your question? Liz, we can't hear you. Maybe your mic's not working. So, okay, we'll move on. Sorry, Liz. We'll read your question out at some point. I'd like to move on to Gunther Newcomb. Gunther, hopefully your mic's working and you're free to ask your question now.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. And Nico, fantastic presentation. The scale of your project is absolutely mind-blowing, and congratulations on getting as far as you have. My question is around technology. I mean, it's been commented already that, technology exists and it's out there. But actually, a lot of the hydrogen production is quite expensive, for instance. Do you see some key technologies needing to be developed in order to make these renewables more cost effective, so that you will get sanctioned for the various stages of the project?
Yeah, very good question. We made some analysis on hydrogen, on gray versus blue versus green, and what values and costs are in there, and we really do need cost reduction, and I think therefore we need new technologies or developments of technologies. If you look what has happened in the last years in offshore wind, I think for renewable energy, for hydrogen, we need the same cost curve to follow. And I'm not sure which technology that should be. So that's why, for instance, in the presentation there was the pilot of LOHC, the way to transport hydrogen. We see a lot of different carriers for hydrogen, be it hydrogen liquid, or be it as liquid organic hydrogen carrier, or in methanol, or in ammonia. I don't know yet today which technology will win, so to say. So that's why we said we start with all of them, knowing that it's maybe not cost effective now to do all of them. But if you don't know which one will be the best.
Thanks, Nico. Thanks, Gunther. We're running out of time. I think I've got time for one more question, then a poll, and then the close. So I'm going to come to Gillian King. Gillian, I know you've got a very interesting question to ask Nico.
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. And thank you very much, Nico. It's a really fascinating insight into decarbonisation at a systems level. And I'm really looking forward to drinking some carbon neutral Heineken. My question was sort of similar to what Gunther asked around technology development, but really more focused on the carbon capture and storage part. And I just really wanted to check how you created the opportunities for the supply chain, and how you engaged with like startups and SMEs to make sure that innovative technologies were being developed for the CCS part.
In our approach, we work with, I think it was also in the presentation, Plant 1 is one facility that we have where we try to get startups and SMEs in connection with the multinationals. We also do have a field lab in preparation where we also try by different means to connect large industry with SMEs and scale-ups. We have a program called Port Accelerator, where we scan throughout the world what technology is developed. We get it to Rotterdam and try to accelerate the development of that by getting them into connection with large industry. So we do that for carbon capture. We do that for usage of carbon dioxide as a feedstock. And we hope that some new activities will get out of that.
Okay, super. Thank you, Julian. Thank you, Nico. Great answer, Nico, and something I'm sure that David Miller from TechX might want to talk to you about separately. Fantastic presentation and great questions, everyone. Super to have you on, Nico. Apologies for the slight technical hiccups at the front end of the discussion, but as I said, you coped marvelously well. Fantastic content. So what I'd like to do now is move to our next poll, please. Team, if we could have our poll coming up just before we close the session. You talked a lot about collaboration and working together with partners. So here's a good question about that. Do we have the leadership and vision in Scotland to enable us to decarbonize our own industrial activities? So let's see what the audience thinks on that one. Well, there you go. It's kind of like roughly 50, almost 50-50. 55% agree, 17 disagree, and there's a large portion of the audience that's not really sure. So I think there's a lot of work to be done on the collaboration side for sure. So good insight there. What I'd like to do now is basically just hand over to, I guess the next part of what we're going to do is tell you a little bit about the next Insight60. So we have our own David Miller from OGTC TechX program presenting on the rise of clean tech. David, are you still with us?
I am still here, Stephen, yeah.
Do you want to say a word or two about your session?
Yes, so trying to give some insight into some of the trends that we're seeing coming through, particularly to our own program and the application increase that we've had from clean tech companies around the world, obviously focused around the energy transition. So we're going to be sharing some of those insights as well as some of the gaps potentially that we might have in the ecosystem in the northeast of Scotland to really support and accelerate these companies forward, and building upon some of the best practice from around the world. The opportunity that ahead of us is quite substantial from a clean tech perspective. So it's to talk a little bit about that and how we can potentially convert the northeast of Scotland into the home of clean tech from an energy transition standpoint.
That's fantastic. Thank you, David. So that says almost an hour on the nose. And I'd just like to, once again, thank all the audience members for participating. And Nico, what a great presentation. There's a lot for us to learn from the Port of Rotterdam, that's for sure. And I hope that we can continue the conversation, as the months and years progress, because I think we should be building up this partnership. Great. Well, thank you everyone for attending. Look forward to seeing you at the next Insight60, and have a good weekend. Thank you.
Thank you.